All right, so there's two videos in this set. One is how to access the Salesforce org from the Linux command prompt to make the RESTful API calls. And the other one is how to download documents from Salesforce, like spreadsheets, images, documents that customers have uploaded. How to download them from Salesforce using the Linux command prompt and loading them into the OnBase, which is a document imaging system. And I'll link to each other in the description down below. And if you like the videos, be sure and put a thumbs down and unsubscribe. Thanks. So the flow is that before you make a RESTful API call, you first have to get a token. And I'm doing it by using a username and password. And then that token that you get back, it accompanies all future web service calls, RESTful API web service calls. So this is what gets called first. So I first grab the current token. So I cat this file to get the current token because I need to check if it's still valid. And then I cat this file to get the URL of where I'm making these calls. And I dump those into these two variables. Okay, and then I use curl. And I throw this header, authorization, at Salesforce, bearer, and then I send the token. And what I get out, this preprint just makes it so that the JSON that you get back isn't all on a single line. And that mostly was just for development and debugging. It was easier to read when it's on separate lines like this. Easier for humans. And then I store the result into a file. And then I look in that file for this error message. And if I got it, then I know that I need to, the token is old, it is expired, because I think they only last for 2 hours, although it might be configurable for each Salesforce organization. So if it's old or expired, I need to get a new one. So I make another curl call, and I store the output from that one into this file, token prod. I look for the line called access token, which is this, and I print that token out to a file because I need to reference it in all my future web service calls. So that's what this is, and that's, again, that's what we originally sent. That's what we originally sent. I just called something. I just called anything. In this case, I did limits. Because I needed to see if I was going to get an error or if I was going to get valid data back from Salesforce. And so if I didn't find this error message, then the token is still valid. And then that's the end of the script. I wanted to put the contents of token prod.out right here just so you guys could see what to expect. And these are all fake values, but similar in string length. Okay, so we have a valid security token. So now we can make web service calls to get at our data in Salesforce. So for one of the projects I was working on, I wanted to get the recommendation data. When people apply to the University of Alaska, sometimes they have to submit recommendations to get into different programs. So first thing I do, and again, I'm just doing this in the shell prompt, I go to my directory, and then I do that script that I just showed you. And so whether the token was still valid or it went and got a new one, I now have a token. And I have the URL, which is where in Salesforce I need to go to get to my data. Okay, and then I remove the data file, and then I just set this counter. Okay, so this is the SOCL query. This is how we execute it. We run a command called curl, and then so we go to the query resource, and then this is the SOCL, and it's similar to SQL. I had to put these to break this onto multiple lines just to show you guys, but normally all of this would be on a single line. And then date received, I use one of the Salesforce's reserved keywords yesterday, but I wanted to mention an issue I ran into. So if you were using, in the SQL world, if you wanted to use like, so show me where the data is like this instead of where the data equals this. If you wanted to say percent spring percent, so that the keyword spring is anywhere in the field or in the column. Doing this from the bash command prompt, I had to, so the pluses is the space character, and then %27 is the quote, and then %25 is the percent sign, is this. So that I tripped up on that for a while, so I wanted to mention that in this video, even though I'm not using it in this query. Okay, so we execute the query. The results are in this variable. So instead of writing it out to the file system, it's only going to be used by this script, so I just keep it here. And then we just iterate through the results, looking for next record's URL. One of the limitations about SOCL is that, and the reports, it sounds like, at least if you're using the RESTful API, is you can only receive 2,000 records at a time. So if this query, if it sent me more than 2,000 results, I would first get the first 2,000, and then I would get this variable, and I would make another call, where I'm at, right here. And I would be calling HTTP, blah, 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 whatever, Salesforce, / and then whatever it sent me back. And then when I executed that, put that all back into the variable, come back up here, and look for the next record's URL. Then I'm done, basically. I have spewed all of the results out, so that variable contains the result of this query. And I pipe it to a really interesting command line called JQ, which is good at processing JSON on the command line. So all of my data is stored in the records node, and then this is how I'm spewing out the data. So the name off of the application, and then I'm doing tabs separated, and I just iterate through until that's all been appended to this file called data recommendations, which is what we removed at the beginning of the script. And then that's it. That's all there is to it. So I just wanted to show a simple example of making SOCL queries to get your data out of your Salesforce org from the Linux command prompt. Let me know if you have any questions or comments, or if there's anything I can do to help.